Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer quick match gameplay. This time doing a mirror matchup of dwarves against dwarves. So this should be an entertaining game. So right off the bat, I started off this game planning to do dwarves, and then my opponent decided to mirror match me, and I had to build accordingly. And I think we both took quite a different approach to how to do a dwarf on dwarf build. So it definitely should be an interesting game. For my leader, I chose Grumbrindle because he's a very strong melee lord, has high armor piercing, and can outduel all the other dwarf lords. He also has smoke flash bomb, which should help if fighting other lords as well. So he's right here in the middle. And alongside him, I've got two runesmiths. One's only got Rune of Wrath and Ruin. The other's got all the regular melee attack and Runes of Oath and Steel and Rune of Protection, all that stuff. For my front line, I've got 2 units of Dwarf Warriors making up a shielded contingent, just to protect me from any missile fire, hopefully. And behind that, I have a lot of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. Actually, what is it, 6 units, I do believe. 1, 2, 3, and then, yeah, 6 units. 2 of them are leveled up to rank 1, and I'm basically planning to overwhelm my opponent with sheer no weight of numbers. With the benefit of the runesmith nearby to boost their melee attack up to a respectable level, they should be able to bust through even dwarvish melee defense and kind of melt through them in close quarters. For my main damage component, though, I'm running 3 units of Thunderers. Even though dwarves are shielded, these guys should do a decent amount of damage. They're backed up by, well, the Ulthar's Raiders on one side, who are still stealthed, and I'm hoping to get them around my opponent's flank and shoot him in the back and use Mark of Ulthar to weaken his lords and that sort of stuff. And then Scolder Guard. Normally Scolder Guard aren't particularly great. They cost almost 1100, 1050 for the unit, but they do have armor. They're basically like Iron Drakes because they come with armor piercing on their weapons. So they can melt infantry incredibly quickly if given time to work. So I'm definitely hoping to use them against the dwarves here to full effect, because the dwarves don't really have much to shut them down with. My opponent, though, went for a much different comp, I think. I'm actually going to put things. So here I'm shifting over to the woods, because I saw you had artillery, so I'm shifting into the woods, trying to avoid getting shot up on my approach. My opponents decided to run a Goblobber and a Grudge Thrower, so they've already got that advantage as far as range is concerned. Now, a Rune Lord is my opponent's only lord and hero, and he's coming in with all of his various runes and stand your ground. Then for frontline, it's a mix of several different units. 2 units of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, then the Peakgate Guard with Hammerers, Nordgrumling's Ironbreakers, just to kind of hold the line and be near indestructible, Grumbling Guard, and Warriors of Dragonfire Paths, who are Dwarf Warriors with an anti-infantry bonus. I do think this is a bit of an interesting pick, because with 50 points more, he could have gotten a unit of Longers with great weapons, which I think would have been more useful. But we'll see how they perform. And then 2 units of Quarrelers with great weapons. The great weapons are a bit of an interesting choice because dwarves do tend to run a lot of missiles, so that definitely makes you susceptible to enemy ranged fire. And then 2 units of Thunderers, and Thunderers, of course, will perform fairly well against dwarves who are very reliant on their armor for protection. So right off the bat, I'm also trying to move my Ulthar's Raiders out around the flank, because my opponent has no gyrocopter, so he can't really spot him. I'm trying to get into position to snipe away at this Grudge Thrower. My opponent's already opening fire with his Goblobber and his Grudge Thrower at my Dwarf Warriors. And his Grudge Thrower is a Veterancy 7, so it's going to be fairly accurate, especially against the slow-moving Dwarf Warriors. And at this point, I'm kind of pushing up in a hodgepodge manner. I've lost most cohesion, unfortunately, and that is definitely a bit of a problem. Earlier, you can see my Dwarf Warriors are losing a lot of models there. My Dwarf Warriors with shields are not in the front, which is a bit of a problem, but at least I'm pushing my Lords to the forefront, hoping to use them, or Lords and Heroes to the forefront, hoping to use them as kind of a meat shield against the Thunderers. So they could soak up at least one volley before kind of closing the gap and forcing the Thunderers to back off. In the meantime, because I do have a chunk of my army is pushing out over here on the flank, then my opponent is forced to shift some of his forces over to that flank as well. In the meantime, my Ulthar's Raiders, I'm trying to get a wide arc, and my original plan was to go after the artillery to whittle down, because skirmishers can actually destroy artillery very, very quickly, given the chance. Now, the Grudge Thrower is still wailing on this one unit of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and as you can see, they're very close to breaking. They will actually break and retreat in a little bit, after I do believe they take another hit from, or volley from Goblobber. As you can see, they're on 0, they're wavering, they're falling apart, and they're going to retreat. I do pull these great warriors with great weapons into the woods. I'm trying to make the best use possible I can of terrain, while at the same time keeping my skirmishers fairly out in the open where they can be able to get decent shots. Now the volleys of Thunderfire are coming in, pretty hot and heavy, but I'm pushing in with Grumbrindle and the 2 runesmiths as quickly as I can, just trying to gap close Some of those satchel charges are coming in and not coming back, but I pop Foe Seeker and Deadly Onslaught just to gap close a little quicker. And in the meantime, just trying to close the distance with all my units as fast as I can. Now, over on this flank, on the right flank, I'm going to be a bit outmatched because 2 units of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons and the Warriors with Dragonfire pass against only 2 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. But I'm hoping to simply overwhelm with the support of the skirmishers. In the meantime, my Dwarf Warriors are closing the gap. I do pop Runes of Wrath and Ruin, and I'm trying to pop my various Runes of Oath and Steel and Rune of Negation on my units that are in there, while kind of getting us around on these 3 major high-end units. In the meantime, my Dwarf Warriors with great weapons do push in, and I start shooting at the Rune Lord with the Thunderers, trying to just whittle them down as quickly as I can. The Quarrelers aren't going to do too well against Thunderers because they don't have armor piercing, but they will do some damage over time, in spite of the shields and the armor. So I do have to be a little careful. In the meantime, my Ulthar's Raiders are trying to get around the flank, trying to get in on this Rune Lord, shut him down, and all that sort of stuff. Dwarf Warriors are simply fighting it out. Unfortunately, I popped Grimbrindle Knows No Fear, which was definitely a bit premature. And I'm not quite on top of pushing my great weapons up. These great weapons are still sitting around, and I honestly should have been pushing them up immediately. These great weapons finally recovered, and they're pushing back up. These guys are still moving slowly, and and the Scolder Guard unfortunately tends to get blocked, and so I'm struggling a little bit to get them into position to fire. But now you can see the steam going in, and you can immediately see how much damage they're doing. Just a few hits, and they've already done immense amounts of hurt. These guys are just dropping like flies because they're all clumped up around here trying to fight these Dwarf Warriors. Thunder's over here just demolishing the Rune Lord. He's been hit by Marco Ulthar, or he was a second ago. And now he's in melee with the Ulthar's Raiders, but he won't do that well against them. They should be able to whittle him down. In the meantime, over here, the P8 Guard is actually doing very well against the Runesmith and Grimbrindle. Because Grimbrindle doesn't have the greatest melee defense, and the Runesmith is, once again, the Runesmith has even worse melee defense. So they're definitely struggling a bit against the P8 Guard, and I think I overcommitted him here a bit. I should have definitely pulled him back. The Rune of Oath and Steel does help protect against Norglimians though, and now that the Thunderers are getting routed off, I'm going to be able to flank around with his infantry. My opponent's artillery is almost out of ammo. I'm simply ignoring his artillery because it's not really worth dealing with in my opinion. Over here, the Scolder Guard is still dishing out a lot of hurt, but I'm unfortunately getting some rear shots into my allies, and now I'm getting blocked or obstructed. Thunderers, though, trying to shoot at these Dwarf Warriors, but they are taking immense amounts of fire from the flank, especially from this unit of Thunderers. I decided to ignore my opponent's skirmishers in favor of breaking the front line so that I can get my Dwarf Warriors into this enemy back line. Ulthar's Raiders over here trying to reform up and throw axes at these guys. But now my Thunderers have all broken and they're all retreating. And as you can see, the throwing axes do absolutely immense amounts of work. Scolder Guard is doing quite a bit of work to these Thunderers. Over here I do pop some a Rune of Negation, and then I'm going to, shortly thereafter, I'm going to pull Grimbrindle and the Runesmiths away, and simply let the low-end Dwarf Infantry swarm all over the P8 Guard and the Norgrimians Ironbreakers. I don't really want to waste my time trying to fight with them. In the meantime, though, Scolder Guard is still dishing out a lot of hurt, throwing some steam at these Thunderers, but they are getting a little obstructed by the woods. So I'm going to push forward a bit and start shooting at these Quarrels who are a bit exposed. The Dwarf Warriors over here are dishing it out with the slugging out with the Warriors Dragonfire Pass. You can really see how much damage this is doing. That's like 500 volley. Actually, well over about a 700 damage per volley, and it's just melting these guys very, very quickly. But unfortunately, Ulthar's Raiders do get focused down. They don't have shields and they have very little armor, so the Quarrels will actually do very well against them. And my opponent's Dwarf Warriors with great weapons are coming back, as is Rune Lord. In the meantime, though, my Thunderers are coming back with that famous Dwarven resilience and high morale, and they're just marching straight back into the fight, starting to shoot at these Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, who are now all exposed over here, trying to fight against my Dwarf Warriors. Scolder Guard, though, still melting away at these guys, just destroying the Quarrelers as quickly as they can. And you can just see those gouts of steam completely destroying these guys, all the way up to 59 kills, and still going. Over here, I'm still dropping Runes of Wrath and Ruin on these guys, just trying to whittle them down. While keeping me surrounded with this blob of infantry. This whole blob of infantry is actually cheaper, I do believe, is definitely like about 1,000 cheaper than those 2 units alone. In the meantime, though, my Dwarf Warriors with the great weapons have gotten on top of the Grudge Throwers. At this point, it's a fairly useless gesture because they're almost out of ammo. In the meantime, the Rune Lord over here is kind of falling apart. He just pops Stand Your Ground and Rest Rune of Oath and Steel. And my Ulthar's Raiders are coming back to the field with a vengeance, planning to just finish off that Rune Lord once and for all. Thunder is doing quite a bit of work here. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are actually pushing back to try to get after my Thunderers, I assume, or perhaps they're just simply pursuing these Dwarf Warriors. I'm not entirely sure. Scolder Guard, though, still working. As my opponent's units clump up around Grimbrindle, and they're just firing away. I take down the Rune Lord with some well-placed volleys from the Ulthar's Raiders. Scolder Guard just melting those guys. Finally, my opponent's army is just simply starting to shatter. So even the Ironbreakers and the P8 Guard over there were really badly beaten up. So definitely a bit of an interesting game. Mirror matchups can always be a bit rough. I do think it was interesting to see how me and my opponent both took very different approaches to fighting this out. I went with a very horde, as far as dwarves are concerned, a very horde, overwhelming with numbers sort of build, backed up by sturdy support units like Ulthar's Raiders, Skulder Guard, and the Runesmiths and Brindle. Whereas my opponent went for a very heavy elite infantry and artillery build. Um, Interestingly enough, the Dwarf Warriors got quite a lot of work done because they got on top of the Thunders, and they will actually, obviously, they'll come out on top in that sort of situation in a bit of a slow and steady grind. The Runesmiths did okay. They were mostly fighting, them and Grim Brindle were mostly fighting elite units for much of that game, trying to deal with the Picket Gardener and Grimling's Iron Breakers. Honestly, that was quite a bit of a mistake on my part. I shouldn't have left him in that fight. I should have pulled him away and gone after my opponent's range contingent or gone to help my right flank. The Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons did performed ranging from atrocious to really well, depending on who they were up against and what their luck was. The Thunders didn't rack up a lot of kills, but they did take down that Rune Lord for the most part, and they did get some damage on my opponent's flanks, whittled down some of those Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons before getting routed off. So that's definitely not a terrible performance. Ulthar's Raiders also helped melt down the Quarrelers and melt down the Rune Lord. The Skulder Guard performed really well. Now, Skulder Guard normally is not particularly great, neither are Iron Drakes, because there's so many ways of shutting them down. Most factions can outmaneuver dwarves, so they will get some sort of cheap unit into your backline. Vampire counts, who they can shoot you down with skirmishers because these guys don't have shields and they have very short range. So against something like Vampire, and then against something like Vampire counts will just get zombies dropped on you, and they'll just tie down your Skulder Guard for all eternity, even though they won't do any damage. So the Skulder Guard generally isn't very good, but against dwarves, especially because my opponent didn't focus them out. If he'd brought cannons, perhaps he could have focused them out. Grudge Throwers, because they're so inaccurate, even the high-end ones like Goblobber and the ranked one up one, they're not accurate enough. The Skulder Guard are fairly spread out. The Iron Drakes, they're not like clumped up in formation. There's only 18 of them, so generally they'll be able to tank through artillery reasonably well. And by advancing through the woods and all that, these guys definitely performed very, very well. On my opponent's side, Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons performed very well, so did the Warriors with Dragonfire Pass. The Peak Guard and Norgluming's Iron Breakers, of course, did very, very well against what was far inferior infantry, though not as well as because they got surrounded and because I had all that support from Grim Brindle and Runesmith, not as well as I think my opponent hoped. Quarrels did got some kills. I do think Quarrels were a bit of a lackluster pick. I think my opponent would have been better off either running Rangers. If he wanted the Great Weapon Armed Infantry, he might have been better off running Rangers with Great Weapons. Because the throwing axes do have armor piercing and they are stealthed. And I think it was because given that in Dwarf on Dwarf you're probably going to see a lot of Great Weapons. The Rangers with Great Weapons are probably done better. Thunder is obviously a good choice. I think because Dwarves have a lot of shielded units, and because I got into these Thunders very, very quickly with Grumbrindle, the Runesmiths, and then followed up with the Dwarf Warriors, these guys didn't get much time to work. The Goblobber and the Grudge Thrower, I never shut them down, so they kept shooting in the whole game. And given that they spent all their ammunition, this wasn't the most impressive amount of kills. 69-64 against relatively cheap units. Definitely shows, I think, the power of spaghetti lines, because most of my units were very drawn out and strung out in spaghetti lines, so they were very hard targets. These guys did rat off my Thunders, though, which was definitely a bit of a problem. Regardless, good game to my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed this mirror matchup. If you did, be sure to leave a like or subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any ideas for future builds you'd like to see, anything you'd like to see me demonstrate, be sure to leave those down in the comments. I'll respond as soon as I can. I appreciate you all for watching, and bye for now.